Hello and welcome to this video. I bet you are very curious about performance domains. This is a big change between the PMBOK 6th edition to the new PMBOK Guide 7th edition, and I'm going to describe what is a performance domain and how can we use these 8 performance domains we have here in the PMBOK Guide 7th edition. So first of all, talking about the performance domains. The performance domains focus on outcomes. So not outputs. Instead of the PMBOK Guide 6th edition, we had a process-based approach. So PMBOK Guide 6th edition, we had process-based, which means we were very focused on knowledge areas, and also on the processes, inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs. We are not going to focus on this anymore, which is a very prescriptive approach, which is somewhat difficult to implement in more agile organizations we have right now. And when we think about performance domains, the first thing that you have to pay attention is that the performance domains focus on outcomes. What is an outcome? Outcome is something that you have as useful. So it's not only that you have, for example, the output. You have a document, and then this is the output of a process, for example, or you have an action, something like this. When we think about outcomes, this is something that we desire, and there are many different ways to achieve these outcomes. So in other words, what you want to see is or accomplish associated to a specific performance domain. So the outcomes is what we want to accomplish. And we have 8 performance domains, as I mentioned to you. And these 8 performance domains, I'm going to describe each of them right now. So the 8 performance domains, the first one is the performance domain related to the team. And when you think that you have to manage the team, what are the outcomes that I would expect in managing the team, for example? The performance domains are the ways you measure project success from an internal and external point of view. What you want to accomplish, the outcomes you want. So if we think about the team performance domains, we want, for example, high performance teams or high performing teams. We may think that we also want the team members to have great ground rules, that they can work together, collaborate. So these are some of the descriptions we have in this performance domain: how to build a team, develop a team, create a great team culture, provide the tools, the coaching, the feedback that you need so that you can have high performing teams. This is one of the achievements we have. The next performance domain we have is related to stakeholders. And again, when you think about a performance domain, what do we want to achieve from our stakeholders? Engage the stakeholders, understand the stakeholders, participative stakeholders. You want your stakeholders to help you in delivering the project, but also you want to create value to your stakeholders. So when we think about the stakeholder domain, we want good relationships. Think about relationships here. Relationships, and that's what we want to accomplish. Of course, you're going to find in the guide better description when providing you a summary. There are many different ways that you can achieve great relationships, engage, have participative stakeholders, and you're going to measure the project's success from an internal and external point of view. If you have high-performing teams, healthy teams, collaborative teams, if you have good relationships with your stakeholders. So this is a somewhat different approach. I think you're now trying to compare the PMBOK 7 to the 6th edition. In the 6th edition, we have a more prescriptive approach. You have to identify stakeholders, and then you have an output. You have the stakeholder register, fill it, and that's all. But if you fill the stakeholder register, it is complete. Do you have good relationships with your stakeholder because of that? Probably not. So when we think about outcomes, we're thinking about a broader concept and leaving room for you, the project manager, and your team to understand a better way to manage these performance domains. It's important that you keep in mind that these performance domains are very important, and you will be able to achieve the best results with that. The third performance domain is the life cycle. So again, you have to manage the life cycle. Choose the best life cycle based on the project information. Maybe an iterative approach, phased approach, larger phases, shorter phases. You're going to use agile approach, waterfall approach. So whatever approach, you have to take into consideration what is best for your project in terms of performance. So life cycle, we have an example here in selecting the life cycle. Select phases, stages, the hybrid approach, iterative approach, whatever approaches you want, based on the needs of your specific project. So that's the idea. Selecting cycles, phases, development approaches that are appropriate for your project. So 1, 2, 3, we have the fourth performance domain, which is planning. So the fourth performance domain is planning. Planning as a performance domain is a very different approach and very interesting approach in my opinion, because we have to think again what is the outcome we want here. Applying the appropriate amount of planning. So planning, we as project managers, we're always focused on planning. Let me just put the numbers here. So this is the first one, second one, then the third performance domain, and now moving to the fourth performance domain, which is planning as I just described it. So what is the right amount of planning we need for this particular project? This is a question I receive very often from my team members and from other stakeholders. Do we need to plan for 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, 1 day? What is the proper amount of time we need? And not only the proper amount of time, but we have to think about the tools, applying the right time, the right tools for your planning, in taking into consideration your specific project. So let's move to the fifth performance domain. So number 5 is navigating uncertainty and ambiguity. And when we do a comparison to the PMBOK Guide 6th edition, again, I find this very interesting, because navigating uncertainty in a way is related to risks, but it's much broader than that. Uncertainty, and not only uncertainty, you have to take into consideration ambiguity as well. So navigating uncertainty means that we have to take risks, we have to calculate the risks, take calculated risks, also take the proper risk responses and analysis we need for our projects. But again, this is a broader concept. When we think about the outcome, what is the outcome we want here? And the outcome we want for planning, for example, we want to have as much planning as needed, but not more planning than needed, because otherwise we're going to spend a lot of time and maybe this is going to be counterproductive. And when we think about uncertainty, what is the outcome we want related to the uncertainty? When we think about this, it is important that we take into consideration exploring not only the opportunities and threats, but taking into consideration whatever is needed here so that your project is going to be more successful. So taking into consideration threats, opportunities, and other ways that we can achieve better results. So let's move to number 6. So the performance domain area. The performance domain number 6 is related to delivery. And this is also related to something we had in the past when we think about execution here. But delivery as a performance domain is also a broader concept. When we think about delivery, we have to take into consideration the teams and everything else that is needed. And I would like to think, what is the outcome you expect when we think about the delivery? When we think about delivery, we have many different aspects that we must take into consideration. We may, for example, think about the development cycle. We may think about architecture, the end results. It might take into consideration, of course, it really depends on your project. But again, it's a performance domain, focus on the outcomes, what you want to accomplish with the delivery for your specific project. So let's move to number 7 right now. So number 7 is performance. And I'm also going to include the next one, so performance This is the performance domain number 7, and in number 8 we have the project work. So what are the differences here? Again, think about outcomes, what we want to accomplish when we think about performance. And a performance example means that we will be able to explore the project environment and use this into our advantage. How we are going to track performance, what are the data we want to record, what information we are going to collect, analyze, provide, store, retrieve, send information to our stakeholders. So the performance domain is how we're going to track performance and take actions so that we can achieve our targets and the expected results for the project. And when we think about the project work, this is very interesting because when we think about project work, it's related to the delivery, but it's more related to how we accomplish the activities and the team, and also if we did the right choices in the delivery. So project work is enabling our teams and enabling our resources, not only human resources, enabling our resources to do the work in the best way possible. We may organize work into different ways, we may use different approaches. Remember the chapter about models, methods, and artifacts. We can take into consideration this when we think about the project work. So these are the 8 performance domains. When you think about a performance domain, you are going to study a little more and understand the PMBOK Guide 7th edition. Think about outcomes and what you want to accomplish. You have better description there, and I hope you understand this and put into practice in your next project. Stay tuned. I'm going to explain the 12 principles of the PMBOK Guide 7th edition in my next video.